In the news this week, an Australian Chinese man who was targeted in a local shopping mall speaks out against racist harassment.
Lack of youths. Will the recent resignation of two major MPs pave the way for younger politicians? Doctors Association says Western Australians are unprepared for an inevitable coronavirus outbreak. And Highway to Hell. Canning Highway becomes a 10-kilometre celebration of rock and roll.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. The recent racism incidents triggered by coronavirus intensifies in Australia, with victims in WA presented their concerns to the Federal Racial Discrimination Commissioner. Meanwhile, some media veterans agreed that newsrooms in Australia lack diversity, which can cause further misunderstanding on racial matters. Sarah Smith begins our coverage.
William Susenso and his wife were confronted with coronavirus racism 2 weeks ago in a local shopping centre, when a man in his 30s approached them and hurled racist vitriol at the couple. William spoke out about the incident, saying that he was disappointed in Australia.
I hope that I can change the environment of my life by coming to Australia, the so-called multicultural country. But because of these issues, has been blew up politically or what, with a certain objective.
Doctors emphasise that COVID-19 isn't racial.
So the virus doesn't respect what race you're from.
The Racial Discrimination Commissioner says it's hard to point fingers about the issue and says that although reporting problems happen, they are rare.
By and large, media in this country have been very responsible, in doing their job.
The WA Media Union President Martin Turner says that it's unmistakable that newsrooms tend to be majority white.
It's just a prima facie case, and I mean it prevails in all sections of the media in general.
But he says that things are changing, and it shouldn't be hard to get more people of colour into the industry.
It probably doesn't actually require that much in terms of, the people are there, they're being trained, they're out there.
Young people are urged not to turn a blind eye to racism when they see it. Sarah Smith, WAMN News.
Politics in Western Australia will face more changes, with two prominent MPs, Labor Treasurer Ben Wyatt and Greens MP Robin Chappell, announcing they won't contest the upcoming state election. The resignation has raised concerns on the lack of youth voices within local politics and government executive level. Helene Fung reports.
When Ben Wyatt announced he would not contest in the next election, his resignation came as a shock to many people. Citing a desire to spend more time with his family, the former lawyer will be leaving politics at the age of 45.
Today I am announcing that I have decided not to stand as a candidate in the 2021 state election.
His departure is the loss of one of the youngest members of state parliament and leaves some experts wondering if there is any meaningful youth representation left in the state parliament.
I can't imagine the 60-year-olds and late 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds that we've got in Parliament are actually going to be doing the job of giving young people a voice.
Dr Ian Cook says the parties need to prioritise getting young people into positions.
And I think we're seeing some of the consequences in terms of younger generations' interests not being represented in terms of employment, in terms of education, to some extent in terms of health and obviously in terms of the environment.
Greens MLC Robin Chappell also announced his departure from politics this week and encourages any young people entering politics to keep focus on the real work.
It's not so much about policy or philosophy, but it's actually about getting out there and supporting constituents.
Helene Fung, WAMN News.
As WA gets its second case of coronavirus and the Australian government declares COVID-19 a pandemic, the Australian Medical Association says we need to be prepared for thousands of cases to spread across the state. Association Chief Dr Andrew Miller says that Western Australians are not good at preventing the spread of the disease and need to be more careful.
Staying away from work when you're unwell, isolating yourself from the general community when you've got a cold, and that's going to be very important in this, as well as normal hand hygiene, washing your hands and being careful where you sneeze.
The Bureau of Meteorology WA says the unusually wild and stormy weather that's been lashing Perth this week is out of season for February. With the thunderstorm days averaging at only 2 in February, forecasters says consecutive storm activities happening this week is rare. The Bureau says storms are unlikely to continue next week.
So with the thunderstorms, the main cause for that is what's going on in the upper part of the atmosphere. So this rotational area is a low pressure system, but it's sitting high in the atmosphere, it's not down at the surface, and that's driving northwesterly winds down in towards the west coast. That low pressure system in the upper part of the atmosphere has been there really since Saturday, and that's why we've had such a prolonged period of thunderstorms.
The Perth Airport rail link is expected to be completed in late 2021, creating a seamless journey from the city to the departure lounge. The 280-metre sky bridge that arcs over the parking lot will contain record-breaking infrastructure.
It'll have the longest travellators perhaps anywhere in the world in it, and some of the longest escalators as well between the train station and the sky bridge.
The footbridge will be the link between the airport and the rail link that will make it possible to get from the city to the airport in 20 minutes, without having to negotiate the rabbit runs of road into the airport.
Britain is getting ready for more post-Brexit chaos as the Johnson government prepares for major trade talks on Monday. The Prime Minister has so far rejected European Union's request to uphold current fishing rights and trading standards. If negotiations drag on, that will mean a no-agreement situation by June, 6 months before the transition period ends in December this year. US Vice President Mike Pence has been appointed by President Donald Trump to oversee the threat of coronavirus. The president says he's ready to spend billions of dollars to increase US response, telling Congress that the government should spend $2.5 billion to combat the virus. He then stated to the media that the US is very ready to deal with a potential epidemic.
Hell's bells tolled one last time this weekend as Canning Highway became the world's largest stage for Perth Festival finale. Celebrating Bon Scott's Perth links at 5 p.m, a 300-kilo AC/DC-style hell bells rang out, signalling the festivities underway. 10 kilometres of Canning Highway was closed to traffic for a procession of AC/DC tribute acts to make their way from Applecross to Fremantle, in a striking that will no doubt be remembered for years to come.
Drivers, start your engines. I'm going to ring the Hell's Bell to start this marvellous, iconic West Australian celebration. Thanks very much.
You know, Danny, you have to admit that singing on a moving flatbed truck is not only rare in Perth, but it's really cool.
Very cool. And that's our news and current affairs for this week. We have the latest news on our website and Facebook page.
See you next week, folks. Have a great evening.
Good night.